welcome to my channel, OlusolaLive. My name is OlusolaTaiwo, and I'm so glad that you're able to join me today. Today I'm about to do something that I've never done before. I'm going to be doing a book reading on my channel, and it's going to be an entire book. It is befitting that this is the first book that I'm going to read on my channel because it's a book by someone very special, near and dear to my heart. Her name is Kehinde Adeola Ayeni, MD. This is my first cousin. Her mom and my dad are brother and sister. And so we share the same grandparents. And I'm so excited to be reading her book. I admire her so much. She is brilliant. She is kind, generous. She is calm, cool, collected. She makes brilliance look so easy. She's hardworking. She's Nigeria's first psychoanalyst. She also is a psychiatrist, a medical doctor practicing in Farmington Hills, Michigan. So we're going to get started on her book. The book is titled Our Mother's Sore Expectations. And I'm going to read the insert inside here, right on the front flap. Our Mother's Sore Expectations. Kehinde Adeola Ayeni has written truth wrapped in the guise of fiction of an ethnically diverse and extremely wealthy African country that has struggled through the legacy of slavery, colonialism, and independence, followed by tyranny and oppression from despots, who repeatedly pillaged her, leaving her citizens destitute, and of Adewale, a brilliant but corrupt dictator whose family history mirrored the turmoil in the country. In an attempt to rid himself of his past, plunged the country into more misery until he met Teju, who had embraced the mythology of her ethnic inheritance. She mobilized other mothers in the country to continuously challenge him, refusing to subject themselves and their offspring to his exploitation, and they slowly led him on a journey of redemption that just for a brief moment gave the citizens a glimpse of hope for a wholesome country. Yeah, that's my cousin's work right there. Kehinde, I love you, I admire you, I appreciate you so much, and it's an honor to have your permission to read your book. I've read this book several times, and I love it, and I've read your second book, and I'm so glad you're working on your third book. Our Mother's Sore Expectation demonstrates the perils of denying personal and national history, and that only that which is self has the power to heal. Kehinde Adeola Ayeni, MD, is a public health physician, psychiatrist, and a psychoanalyst. Born and raised in Nigeria, a mother of two, she is in private practice in Farmington Hills, Michigan. Here we go. Here's the inside, just so you see, okay? And let us proceed to special thanks. Special thanks to Wole Soyinka, Nobel laureate in literature 1986, for permission to use his poems Your Logic Frightens Me, Mandela, and Funeral Sermon Soweto from his book Mandela's Earth. Samson Igodalo, Nigeria, for creating the sculpture on the front cover. Segun Kehinde, MD, for the front cover photograph. This book is dedicated to all my sisters who buy and sell each day in the many markets of Africa. May we always remember our courage. Glossary. Abiku, the curse of repeated infant mortality. Adire, tie and dye fabric. Agba, elderly. Akin, courage. Amugbo, drug addict. Ashoke, richly woven fabric. Bayo, arrived with joy. Bosse, arrived with the new week. Female child born on Sunday. Buba, blouse or men's top. Ejire, Yoruba name for either of a twin. Gele, headdress. Ile logo, home has glory. Iro, traditional Yoruba women's wrapper. Iya, mother, also anguish, but with a different accent. Iya. Kende, Yoruba name for second of a twin. Okobo, impotence. Omoale, curse word, bastard. Omoita, rascal. Shoro, men's pants. Taiwo, Yoruba name for first of a twin. So as you can probably tell, because my cousin's name is Kende, she is a twin, the second of a twin. And she does have a Taiwo as well. Chapter 1. The farthest we can go back in the history of Adewale Adelowo is 4 generations to his great-grandfather, who was born in 1865. His family had always served the king of his town. In each generation, they had to give up their second son to become the head eunuch, guarding the king's wives, a position of great responsibility in the palace. Adewale's great-grandfather was to be given up at this time, which was meant before his 13th birthday. He had to be castrated. He had grown up seeing his uncle and other male members of his extended family who had been castrated, and he didn't want to look or sound like them. They looked ridiculous to him. Not quite like either men or women. He told his father that there was no way he would agree to be castrated, and his father told him that he had no choice in the matter. It was a tradition and had to be obeyed. In our family, we always give up our second son to become the head of the eunuchs in the king's palace, his father impressed upon him. That it was an honorable position, one in which the king would grow to trust him, and he would be well respected in the kingdom. Adewale's great-grandfather didn't want any of it. To him, a eunuch was a eunuch, whether head or tail. They were all castrated, and he was supposed to feel grateful. He ran away before his 13th birthday. His family searched for him for a long time, and finally, after 2 years, resigned themselves to the fact that he was lost to them forever. He was captured by slave traders, sold to a wealthy merchant in another town some 80 miles from his original home, and he worked for the merchant, helping him move his goods from place to place. He took a wife as soon as he could at the age of 16 and started to have children right away. So by the age of 21, he was father of 4 children, 3 sons and 1 daughter. He became severely homesick, missing his parents, older brothers, and 3 younger sisters. He wanted them to know his children. Finally, before he turned 22, 9 years after he ran away, he escaped with his family and returned to his hometown. He rationalized that it was too late to castrate him, and even if they still decided to do it, he already had children, and he would be a free man in his own home. His family welcomed him back with joy. But as punishment for defying the king and running away, he had to become a servant to the man who dressed the king. This was a much lower position than he would have had as the head eunuch. But to him, it was not too big a price to pay for keeping his manhood, and much better than his life of the previous 8 years as a slave. On his death, his second son, Adewale's grandfather, born in 1882, became the servant of the man who dressed the king, and as such, the family lost the esteemed position of the head eunuch forever. The sons in generations to come, even though would be able to keep their manhood, would continue to have the lowly position of the servant of the man who dressed the king. But Adewale's grandfather had burning ambitions. He thought it unfair for a man to be king just because he was born to someone who sat on the throne. He felt that it was an office that should be rotated for everyone to have a shot at it. However, he never did develop the details of how the office should be rotated so that he, a mere servant in the palace, serving the man who dressed the king, would have a chance at being king. He was very bitter at destiny and accidents of birth that allowed one man to drop onto the throne and another man to drop into the house of the servant of the king. His position in the court hardly allowed him the opportunity to see the king, except during special occasions like festivals and celebrations when he came out to mingle with his subjects. Other people had more access to the king than he did because a citizen could walk into the palace and demand to see his king if he was unhappy about one thing or the other in the land. But he, who worked in the palace, was too lowly to see the king because he served the servant of the king. He carried this bitterness in his heart for many years and finally, at the age of 40, arrived at a solution. He decided that he would usurp the position of the king by planning a coup in which he would kill the king and his court and he would become the king. Were he a man of details, he would have known that such things could not be done. It was too complex and intricate, and there were many contenders to the throne. So even if he succeeded in killing the king, 100 men were in line ahead of him to be king. And because he was not a man of details, he proceeded with his plans. He succeeded in killing the king and a lot of other officials of the court present at the time, 10 people in all. Couldn't they have fought back when he sprung the attack with just a machete? The element of surprise was in his favor, and this was a time when anybody could walk into the palace and go up to his or her king and speak with him. There were no guards to stand between the king and his subjects, and besides, this had never happened before. He was stopped, however, by the king's oldest son, the next in line to the throne, when he went after him in his chambers and tried to assassinate him too. The Prince Royal was stronger because he was a wrestler and was not too surprised at the attack sprung on him without any warning. The palace was in an uproar as people fled in every direction away from the assassin with the machete. The prince killed him when he overpowered him and cut him up with his machete. Thus, he brought shame onto his wife and son. They had to sneak away in the middle of the night, and they could not give him a decent burial because they could not come forward to claim his body. Speculations flourished. Some said he went insane and cited similar instances of insanity they had witnessed at other times. Some said he was possessed by evil spirits. Others said he had a pact with the king and the king would not fulfill his end of the bargain. His disgraced family fled, traveling by foot for 4 weeks until they arrived at a small town named Igbo Eleri. The people of this town of almost 1,000 welcomed them when they told them the tale that they had both agreed on during their flight of how their small hamlet of 25 people was raided by slave traders and everyone except them taken into slavery, that they were able to escape the raid because they had been late in returning from their farm. The people helped them build a hut and assisted them as much as it was possible to settle down. They lent them a piece of land to cultivate and contributed goats and chickens for them so they could start to raise some livestock. The son was a very lazy man, and he did very poorly at the occupation of farming and raising the livestock, even though the people of his new home assisted him as much as they could. He was also very bitter. He had expectations that he should not have to work hard to earn a living and that it should drop onto his lap. His mother did the farming and caring for the livestock and prevented the people of their new home from seeing who he really was. She was grateful that they found a home after the shame that her executed husband brought upon them, and the people did not know their true story. She felt that they should be as inconspicuous as possible and be law-abiding, and that they should farm like their neighbors, harvest their crops on time, sell their produce in the market, and keep their mouths shut. It was not their place to make demands or rescind on expectations like the rent on the land they farmed that had to be paid in form of crops. Her son, bitter as his father before him had been, thought otherwise. When he was of marrying age, his mother took great pains to find for him a very good girl in the town, one from a very solid home, full of people of integrity. She wanted to dilute the curse of the line of her executed husband that she could see in her lazy son. She wanted to be sure that the future generations of the Adelawas would have a fighting chance of making something of themselves in this world. She succeeded in wooing the best girl in the town for him. Adewale was born in 1935. His father gave him the name which showed that a part of his own father was still with him, the part that had a contention to the throne, for there he was, disgraced and in exile, still hoping that his newborn son would bring the crown home. The tide of things had turned for the Yoruba people by this time. The white man had been around for some 50 years. He had claimed Yoruba land as his own, and he had joined them together with Hausa land, Ibibio land, Efik land, Ijaw land, Takwa land, and Igbo land, and made it one nation. He had brought his God, his government, his schools, as well as a lot of his laws that had to be obeyed. Some of them were that children had to go to school to be taught the white way, and you had to pay taxes so the white man could have money to send to his own land and to his own king. Disputes had to be settled in his court, not with the Yoruba kings or with the elders anymore. You had to clean your house and its surroundings to his satisfaction. There were people called the police, tax collectors, and inspectors who went around and spied for him, and they would report you to the white man if you did not do as he wished. 5 years after Adewale was born, a white man came to Igbo Eleri. Nobody in the town had seen a white man until this time. The entire town trooped out of their huts and homes and left their farms to see this person. Reports had been heard of him about his skin with no color, his hair that was straight and of different colors, and of the way he dressed, and that he spoke through his nose. So everybody left what he or she was doing and came to see. He was as they had reported him to be. A Yoruba man who spoke his tongue came with him. The Yoruba man told the people what he said and reported back to the white man what the people said. The white man was not happy about the town. He complained that it was too dirty, that there were too many flies and mosquitoes. It was not good for people and their animals to live together or eat from the same bowls. Animals had to be kept in pens so that they did not roam around. People had to cover their water pots. The bushes around the homes had to be cut so that there were not so many mosquitoes, and on and on. The white man continued to talk, and the Yoruba man continued to translate for him. He would tax them, he told the people. That would give his government money to take care of their needs. He wanted to recruit some people in the town to enforce his laws. He asked for volunteers. The people did not like this white man with his ideas and his laws. They wanted him to go back to where he came from. The king asked his translators to tell him that they did not want him and that they would not volunteer to be his police. They had ways of policing and controlling each other, and it had worked for them since the beginning of time, as well as ways of educating their children. The white man and his translator left on that day. Adewale's father wanted to volunteer to be the white man's spy, but he was afraid to speak up when the question was posed. However, he traveled to the white man's office that was in Ibadan the next day and made his intentions known. He knew a lot about the white man, much more than his fellow citizens. He knew that you could not say no to the white man. He had traveled too far from his land, which was said to be far away across the seas, for someone to now say no to him. He had stories of what happened to people who had said no to him. The white man waged wars against them and killed them. He heard stories from travelers who traveled through the town during the day. He always talked to travelers because he wanted to know what was going on in different parts of the world. They told him that the white man was very powerful, even more powerful than the kings and some gods of the land. The white man had removed kings who did not listen to him and do as he wished, and he had installed his own person on the throne, sometimes making people who were slaves kings over their masters. The police, court officials, and health inspectors are the powerful people in the land now. They spy for the white man, and he would treat them well, pay them a salary, and say thank you to them from time to time. Adewale's father got the job of police, tax collector, and health inspector for his town. It was his job to inspect people's homes to be sure that they were clean. He could inspect their water pots and cooking pots. It was his job to collect taxes from the people. He could arrest people who did not build latrines in their homes. He had the power to go into people's bedrooms and see how they lived. He even had the power to go into the king's palace and order his wives around. He told the white man he liked the white man and the power he bestowed on him. He had power over 1,000 people, including the king. He did not have to farm anymore. He now had wages, and as befitting his new position, he was given a bicycle. He had become the most important man in the town, but he abused his powers. He harassed and intimidated the people. He threatened them with arrest, that he would report them to the white man. He collected bribes and had affairs with the women. He finally helped his father to get his revenge. He did not have to wait for his young son to bring the crown home. The king of a faraway land across the seas had given him the crown through one of his own subjects. Adewale was enrolled in the white man's school at the age of 6, and he was brilliant. He always was at the top of his class, and his teachers loved him. He would study hard and read ahead of the class, so he knew all the answers to all the questions. The teachers didn't have to whip him with the cane to get lessons to stay in his head. It was as if he had a natural affinity for the ways of the white man. He was very athletic and good at every sport. He was great on the soccer field and in field hockey, wrestling, and judo. He was the fastest runner in the town. He was just good at anything he set his mind to. He was also very handsome, taller than anyone had ever been in his father or mother's family. He grew to a final height of 6 feet 2 inches. He developed a very muscular, strong body. His head was full of pitch black hair. His skin was like dark brown chocolate. His eyes were almond-shaped, and he had beautiful lips. He had a commanding presence, and every girl in the village wanted to be with him. They all dreamed of marrying him and having his children. It was enough to make their day if he as much as looked in their direction. A god was living among people in this town named for the forest of the elephant. But Adewale was not lazy like his father. He was actually hardworking, and he worked very hard at whatever he was asked or needed to do, and he would succeed. His father continued to grow more powerful with each year. After being a health inspector and police for 5 years, he was appointed by the white man, whom he served very well, to become a judge in the court of his people. The citizens did not like him, and the elders amongst them remembered when he and his mother came and asked for shelter, and they regretted accepting them because he repaid good with evil. His behavior is that of a bastard. We should have known, they admonished one another. Their story at the time had been too woeful to be true, but they liked his son. He was a good and hard-working man and was the pride of the town. They concluded it was the quality attributes of his mother's side of the family shining through. Adewale was a son every man wished he had, and that every woman wanted for her daughter. He completed high school and sat for the ordinary level school certificate examinations, and for the first time in his life, he failed. And woefully too. When the result came back from England, where the papers were graded, because at the time of an examining board in London administered the examination for all the colonies. Adewale received F in all subjects. His teachers were surprised. This was their golden son. There was no way he could have failed, and so badly. The principal of the school protested on behalf of his brilliant student and demanded that his papers be graded again. They were reviewed a second time, and he still failed. Adewale was as surprised as his teachers. He knew that he could not have failed the examinations. Less able students than he scored higher. For the first time in his life, he was depressed. Something he wanted very much was out of his reach. He was humiliated. His teachers and principals suggested that he again sit for the examinations the following year, and swallowing his pride, he continued to attend school, while some of his classmates who had plans of pursuing higher education, moved away from the town to attend schools for advanced level education in Ibadan and Lagos. The following year, he again sat for the examination after he doubled his efforts preparing for them, and again he failed miserably. He could not understand what was happening, nor did his teachers and the school principal. His father decided to take matters into his own hands, and he approached the white district officer about the examination. The district officer interviewed the principal and Adewale's teachers, and they all expressed their concerns and suspicions that the boy was being failed on purpose. But why would anyone fail him? They do not know him in England. The students don't put their names on the papers, and he was just a number to the people grading his papers. But something was definitely wrong, they lamented to the district officer. The district officer wrote to the Governor General of the nation about this, and upon the request of the Governor General, Adewale's papers were graded again, and this time he passed with A in all subjects, more like what his teachers expected of him. The explanation from England was that they did not expect a student from Africa to do so well, especially one from a village with illiterate parents. They thought he had cheated on the examination, and that was why they failed him both times. He had the best result of all students in schools in England and in all her colonies in the 2 years. Adewale and his teachers were angry at the injustice. As compensation for the unfair treatment, the Governor General arranged a scholarship to be awarded to Adewale to study in England. Later that year, Adewale left his family and sailed for England for higher education. He was 18 years old. His father advised him to study medicine, but he had other plans. He finished his advanced level education, passed the examination with all A's, and proceeded to the University of London, where he studied political science and government. He, like the other students from West Africa and England, were determined to see an end to the colonial rule, and he felt that his choice of study would prepare him well for a job in government when his country attained independence. He had grown to detest the British for colonizing his people, especially after the unjust treatment of failing him in the examinations he passed simply because he was from Africa. All of his life, he had not been able to understand how Africans could have allowed the Europeans occupy them in the first place. He felt that the Africans in positions of power were idiots who did not know what they were doing. He had great ambitions, and he dreamt of the kind of nation he would like his country to become, and of Africa as well. He endured a lot of discrimination and prejudice while in school in England. But where his grandfather had lacked focus and had not paid attention to details, Adewale's greatest gift was that he was able to concentrate on an issue to the exclusion of all others, and he was obsessed with details in all that he did. He decided that the prejudice and discrimination he would fight with all his abilities, the best ammunition he had being his intelligence and achievement of excellence in all that he did. His attitude to his fellow racist white students was, if you think that you are better than me because your skin is different from mine, wow, you can have that. But you and I will meet in the classrooms, at the examinations, and on the playing fields of soccer, hockey, or of cricket, and then we will see who is superior. He would verbalize these to them, and whenever he was taken up on the challenges, which was rare, he would beat whoever at any of these. They all developed a grudging respect for him. To any teacher who dared put him down a peg or two because of the color of his skin or because he was from Africa, he related the story of how he was failed twice by the English Board of Examiners, and how when his papers were graded again on the demands of the Governor General of his country, he actually had the best result for 2 years of all students in England and her colonies. He carried copies of the result with him all the time, and these he would show to the teachers as well as the correspondence from the Governor General to the examining board and the examining board's explanation of why he was failed. He would conclude to these teachers by telling them that if they thought nothing good came out of Africa, they were wrong, because he came out of Africa and he was there to beat them at their games. He matched his words with actions too, and he was the best student in all his classes. Upon graduating from the University of London, he applied to Oxford University for a master's degree in political science. He applied for scholarship in order to pursue this, and he continued to cite the unfair treatment he received from the examining board as proof of his abilities, and as the reason why he should be granted a scholarship. I am the best that you have ever seen, and that you will see for many years to come, he explained to the members of these boards. I was so good that your fellow countrymen could not believe that someone this brilliant could come out of Africa. He received the scholarships and attended Oxford University. He felt that he needed the education from the place because it was a place where world leaders were trained. While he was in England, he continued to participate in as many sporting events as he could. He joined the polo team, cricket team, and the rowing team in Oxford, excelled at these, and he was loved by a lot of the people for his intelligence, his good looks, and his sporting abilities. He received invitations to all the right places in spite of his black skin, a rarity in the 1950s. And he cultivated friendships with his white classmates, even though deep in his heart he held them in contempt. But he was building up a network of friends that he would need in the future, so he courted them as much as he could. And by the time he had left England, he had made friends from all over the world, men like him that he knew would go back to their countries to be leaders. A lot of white women wanted to date him and even marry him, but he would not court any of them because of the dislike he had for the British in general. He tolerated them for what he needed from England. So even though a lot of his African friends were dating and even marrying the white women, he stayed away from them. He distanced himself from the female students from his country as well. And all he would do was have an occasional fling with one or the other of the girls in his homeland circle. He would tell them that he was not the marrying kind. At the time, he decided that the most important thing was to get the best out of England and beat them at their own games. He needed to learn their ways and understand what it was that they had that enabled them colonize his people. The scholarships they gave him as a way of apology for the unfair treatment of failing him in the examinations was not enough to assuage him the humiliation of the experience. He graduated from his master's program and, as characteristic of him, did very well at that too. He returned home in 1960. His country at this time was agog with activities toward independence and self-rule. There was a lot of excitement in the air and promises of great things to come for all the citizens when they attained their independence from the British. Here ends Chapter 1. Thank you. Chapter 2 will follow at a later date. Please tune in to get that. Bye for now.